Hello, I'm Dr. Gaurav Rao. Today we're going to talk about community as learning resource. After the completion of this lecture, you'll be able to know how community is a resource to learning. You'll be able to understand what are community-based learning programs. You'll be able to define what is community-based learning. You will be able to construct the community and school relationship goals. You'll appraise the community as a context for learning. You will equip yourself with the skills required to use community as a resource for learning. You'll comprehend the different community themes. You'll be able to identify possible resources within your community for learning. You'll be able to use the resources in the classroom applications in teaching learning process. So let's go. Nowadays, the qualitative educational improvements are in the top priority of any country. And as we know, the HC has witnessed the changes in education as per the philosophy and the changes in our society. And with the time, the tremendous change has taken place due to the increase in international collaborations and competitions and due to the exchange between the different communities. And today's approach of sitting in a classroom, learning about different subjects, reading about their textbooks, and doing worksheets does not give any opportunity for the learners to engage themselves with the community, and hence it does not lead to the overall development. It is our prime responsibility to provide an environment where our students, who are the future citizens of our country, have an authentic opportunity to participate in the different rules that are to be played by them in the communities in the coming time. It is to be taken into account that the students are to be connected to the interest and the factors that are consideration to the students. It is to be taken into account that connecting students to their interest is important. Let's see what are community-based learning programs. Community-based learning programs are based on the teaching and learning strategies that integrates meaningful community involvement with specific instructions and exercises to enrich the learning experiences. It is basically a pedagogical process that is based on the premise that most of the prominent learning often occurs and it comes from the experience, from the guidance, context providing foundational knowledge and intellectual analysis. The opportunity for students to personally observe and have their interaction with the society brings them an in-depth learning experience of the society. Community-based learning refers to the wide variety of instructional methods, programs that educators use to integrate with what is being taught in schools to what is present in the surrounding communities. It includes the local institutions, history, literature, cultural heritage, and national environment. Community-based learning is also motivated by the belief that all communities have intrinsic educational assets and resources that educators can use to enhance learning experiences by students. Let us see the school relationship goals one by one. The figure 1 represents the typical relationship between the school and communities that exist today. School chooses for the courses that has little exposure of activities taking place or needed in the community. After the completion of the course, students are assumed to know how to be a participating and contributing member of the community. Without knowing it, he cannot contribute to society as well. Figure 2 shows activities taking place out of the community but not interacting with the community processes. For example, observational survey studies of the local site where there is no additional purpose other than doing observation and filling up the survey form doesn't fulfill the purpose. The school has not been asked to serve as a resource or participate by the community. In addition, guest speakers come in the school, talk about it, may just bring some of the things from the community to the school. But again, students do not get an experience of community which is first-hand. This is figure 3 that represents the relationship between the school and community that NCSR advocates for the school program. In this model, schools are involved in serving as a resource for the community. The skills, knowledge, and attitudes are developed within the authentic experiences of the community. Student citizens are involved in the community process and are considered a valuable resource by the community. Proper attention is taken care of the development of the states of the students and plans for the activities accordingly. For example, elementary school students should have a frequent exposure to the ecosystem studies. It is important to note that the relationship between the schools and the communities is almost mandated. Let us talk about community as a context for learning. Community of context of learning is basically the understanding of the community around us is essential in the development of community-based learning. There are three areas that will be used to describe the community. First one is the lifelong learning, second is community themes, and community life roles of community members, which we'll be discussing in the discussion later. The three areas that describes a community are all connected. All these further supports the notion that schools need to more closely interface with the community. The citizens access and participate within a community in a variety of ways. Often this involvement serves as a source of action where lifelong learning like skills, knowledge and attitudes is needed. The interaction of community members within these themes allows for learning. Let us talk about the lifelong learning first. It is the area of community that deals with lifelong learning and skills, knowledge and attitudes necessary to function effectively in a community. In this rapidly changing world, new skills are needed by broad segments of the public to maintain pace with community development, careers and jobs. Keeping up with these constant changes can often exceed the capacity of the average citizen. A community-based educational program could help bridge the gap between the citizens and their active participation in their communities. Each member of the community brings a wide range of personal skills and knowledge to the public process, educational experiences, their own personal life experiences, diverse attitude, and their own unique personality. The question for full participation is not so much how old the citizens are, but what is their potential entry-level skill for participation in the public area is important. Although somewhat unclear for the same, it is clear to the educational reform efforts that students are and must be considered full participating citizens into the communities. Let us talk about some of the skills that are required to use community as a resource. The first one is the effective communication. It can be oral or written. How people discuss their folk wisdom, unofficially share many knowledgeable experiences to the novice learner. Use of electronic communication like emails, web accesses, etc. acts as a skill that you need to know to learn more. Problem-solving approaches for the community actions are important. That gives lifelong learning, impulsive learning, and strategic learning by the learners. Techniques to become a team learner is a big skill that a learner should learn. In a society, you have to work as a group, and in doing so, you need to have the skill to be a team learner. Another skill that you have to have is the organizational skill. How to organize the activities, how to organize the people that are participating in the activities is important. Let us talk about the knowledge that are required to use community as a resource. The first is knowledge of community processes. If you know how a community is working, what is the process that are taking place in the community, gives you a learning edge. If you are from the same community, you have a learning background, you have a learning base, and you can learn it better. Next, knowledge is the opportunity to build a sense of place. Opportunity to build a sense of place means when you are in a place, you need to have an understanding of that place to be your place of learning. And once you do that, you basically have a sense that this is your own place to work and this is where you have to work. And you have to take care of that place, and hence this gives a different learning, which is basically the affiliation of your learning towards the place where you are. Access to the community and the regional history is the next knowledge that you have to know about the community to be a learning resource. If you knew about the history of the place where you are working, where you are learning, you know about the regional history of the place, you are more acquainted with that particular place. You are more into the ethics and ethos of that particular place, and hence you have a different learning style. Next is the knowledge of relationship of community in state, national and global context. If you have an understanding of how you are learning, what you are learning is going to affect your place in your local arena and international arena, you'll be able to learn accordingly. You have to basically work upon the places of learning in your own way and develop it into the larger context. Next is interaction of economic, social and ecological elements of community. How the economic, social and economic elements of community are working together, how you are learning that these components are affecting each other is important. When you have a knowledge of interaction of these components, economic, social, ecological elements, you basically can strategize your learning and you can develop your own plans. Next is the local geography. If you know about the place of your learning, your geographical identification of learning, your regional differences of your learning, you'll be able to learn more and you'll be able to have a practice of those areas in your own way. The next skill that you have to have is the attitudes that are required to use community as a resource. First is the spirit of cooperation. Wherever you go, whenever you go, if you want to learn in a community, you have to have a spirit of cooperation. If you can't be with the person with whom you are, you cannot cooperate, you cannot learn with them. Next is to support for linkage between rights and responsibilities of the university. What does that mean? When you have an understanding of what are your rights and what are your responsibility, you can make them up one and you can work accordingly. Next attitude is the building up of sense of ownership of the community. If you feel that where you are working in the community, it is yours, it is where you have to work to grow, it is where you want to work the community to work for a better future, you have a positive results in learning. Next is the confidence and actions to identify, analyze and select. If you have a confidence to identify what you are doing, do an analysis of what you're doing, and you can accordingly design your actions, you are something that a teacher wants you to be a good learner. Some of the attitudes are actions to resolve the issues is also that is accepted and wanted by you to be in community and work as a learning resource. That is what you do and how you do and how effectively you come out with the result is important. Let us talk about the community themes that are important for using community as a resource. The learning from the actions of the community can be organized into community themes. The themes being proposed are useful organizers for our communities and can also be used to plan and focus asset inventories. These are valued social, economical, and ecological components of the community. The inventories, if you can develop, would serve as a common resource of community members and be helpful in planning and developing community actions plan. None of these themes operates in isolation in the real world. Thus, the community themes are also important for purpose for planning. I'm going to talk about some of the list of the proposed community organizing themes, which are like this. The human resource, the fundamental area of community study and participation that includes political and social system. These may include, but need not to be limited to education, law and legal studies, law enforcement, public administration, child and family services, religion and social services. Next theme is health and safety services, a theme that is critical to groups and individuals and communities and fosters the promotion of health as well as treatment of injuries, conditions and disease. These may include, but not to be limited to medicine, dentistry, nursing, therapy and rehabilitation, nutrition, fitness and hygiene. Business and management. The economic basis of communities must be understood to ensure participation and includes area of study related to the business environment. These may include, but need not to be limited to, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, hospitality, and tourism, computer information system, finance accounting, personal economy, and management. Next are arts and communications. Often the base of community is its culture and community pride. This includes the area of study related to the humanities and to the performing, visual, literary, and media arts. These may include, but need not to be limited to, architecture, creative writing, films or cinema studies, fine arts, graphic design and production, journalism, foreign languages, radio and television broadcasting, advertising, or anything else. Infrastructure and engineering system. Fundamental to current community infrastructure, this area of study is related to necessity to design, develop, install, and maintain physical systems. These may include, but need not to be limited to, engineering and related technologies, mechanics and repair, manufacturing technology, precision, production, and construction. Next one is natural resource system. Often one of the limiting factors in the community economics and development is the natural resource system. This area of study is related to environment and natural resources system. These may include, but need not to be limited to, architecture, agriculture. These may include, but need not to be limited to, agriculture, earth sciences, environmental sciences, ecosystems, stewardship, land for planning, and land resource. Let us talk about the community roles that are important and it affects the learning through community. The third area of community description is community roles. These life roles of the community are the front line of action and play a significant role in determining the breadth and depth of capacity being added to the community. Linking actions to the life roles can help focus the work both within the formal education community and the broader community institutions. All citizens, including young citizen students, should have the opportunity to function effectively in the following life roles of the community. Let us talk about some community roles. The first one is citizen. To learn and act in a responsible way, to learn the rights and responsibilities of the citizen of the community, state, nation, and world is something that the child should learn. The learning through the community as family member is to learn the rights and responsibilities of the family members and acquire the skills and knowledge to strengthen and enjoy the family life. To be an individual learner is to develop the skills necessary for achieving fulfillment as a self-directed person, to acquire the knowledge necessary for achieving and maintaining the physical and mental health, and to develop the capacity of coping with the changes through an understanding of the arts, communities, scientific process, and the principles involved in making moral and ethical choices. How you learn to be a lifelong learner is basically you learn from the community. It is to develop the skill of reading, writing, doing mathematical skills, and apply them in the context of creating the positive attitude is something that leads to learn. It also helps you to learn that you are the consumer from the society. You acquire the knowledge and develop skills in the management of personal resources. And apart from that, you also learn that you are the producers for the society as well. You learn the various occupations, you learn the values of work by mutual responsibilities. This diagram basically talks about the community, its various components like lifelong learning and the community themes and the life roles that basically works in a circle, and it talks about how the public domains, the information gathering and policy decision making works together. Let us talk about the resources that are there in the community that acts for learning resource. The first one is the culture that talks about the values, customs, clothing, and foods. They help them to learn and imbibe them to be a beautiful citizen and a cultured citizen. The next resource is the literature. Literature acts as a big resource for learning to the students. Without literature, the learner is not able to understand about their culture. The inhabitants of a particular place is also the resource. The peoples living in the hill areas are the resource for that particular area. The various resources of community learning can be the agencies of education as well. like schools, hospitals, post offices, the society, all those around you acts as a learning resource because they are your community. You learn basic things since your childhood to the adulthood, what you see around you. The nearby places like hospitals, station roads, bus, schools, and post offices gives you different experience and exposures to be. Let us talk about some of the natural resources of the community that are important and that gives you learning. Can be the animals, the lands, water, the agriculture, the mineral extraction things, and the forest around you. And if they are natural resources, there can be some man-made resources also, like what fuels are existing there, what industries are in around your community, and what constructions have taken place is basically the community that gives you a learning of your own area around you. It also talks about the recreational activities of the communities, which gives you a learning exposure. Let us talk about very fastly some of the classroom applications. Invite the students to participate in any project that they take in the nearby area. Ask the students to prepare an inventory of their community to discover how community resources are being used. This will give the learners an opportunity to identify and appraise the different roles and responsibilities which he can take care of. There are numerous ways by which you and your students can carry out an effective community inventory or assessment. One way is to create a community resource map. Through resource mapping, the learner can identify how your community works and processes the needs, problems, and issues. This process can help you to identify the possible projects and ideas which you can take up later. Some suggestions that I would like to suggest to you all teachers to how to use your community as a resource for learning is like call the field trips as study trips. Emphasize the treasure of learning that would occur in the community site. Talk to the community resources staff from the place that you will visit with your students. A personal report will give the community staff the background they need to meet your students' need and begin the partnership between your school and the site. Teach your students the study trip etiquettes. Appropriate volume of voices, shaking hands for a proper greeting, eye contact, asking good questions will help them to learn from the society. Before each lesson, introduce child with the name to the community members. It takes only a few minutes, but it changes the atmosphere from the anonymous visitors to the real people. Practice note taking and sketching as tool for learning before the study trips. The most prepared students are beforehand. The most information they will remember. Schedule the community trip before taking up the chapter so that associated learning can take place. Write letters of appreciation to the community members or site members after the study trips that you have learned what. Let's recap what we have learned till now. We got to know what are community-based learning programs. We also defined what community-based learning is. We now understand the community and school relationship goals. We got to know the community as a context for learning. We now know what are the skills required to use community as a resource for learning. We know the different community themes. We can now identify possible resources with the new community. You also got to know how to use the resources in the classroom applications. I hope you have understood how you're going to use your community for learning. Learning is something that is dependent upon whatever you do around you. The community is a big source of learning, isn't it? You have to take care of that whatever is around you is a big learning resource. Community is the first starting step of the child to learn. Give them an opportunity to think over it, ponder over the ideas, explore his role. As I have discussed, he is going to be a citizen or a lifelong learner, or is going to be a consumer of it or a producer of it, and decide his own activities to explore the community areas. I hope that was all important for you all. Thank you so much.